Hello, everybody. I've got Roberta Beary in this interview. She is the roving ambassador for the Haiku Foundation. She is a published poet, the editor, the Haibun editor at Modern Haiku for many years, has written books that are in multiple printings, and a lot of people have seen her work in almost every area of haiku. But I thought it would be fun to actually meet Roberta. I've had the chance to spend time with her in person and on video calls now and in COVID and on the phone. And she's worth listening to. So I thought it'd be a fun interview. And so we're bringing you Roberta Beary today. Roberta, if you would just sort of give us a hint on who you are as a person.
I think the most important thing that's happened to me in the past few years is that 4 years ago, I moved to County Mayo, Ireland. I retired after 35 years as a finance attorney, lived in Tokyo, New York, Washington, DC for work. For a long time, I was a single mom. My first marriage imploded 25 years ago. And 10 years after that, I remarried and have a blended family of husband, children, and grandchildren. And the main thing to know is that life's vicissitudes just keep coming at you, but you have to keep going. You have to, even if you don't know you're going forward, you are. And everything is grist for the haiku mill.
Yeah, we know that more and more lately. But no, I'll tell you, it's fun to meet people in haiku and find out all of their different backgrounds. But I tell people one of the things about you that I say is a attorney knows the value of words, because one mistake, one comma out of place, and all of a sudden, boom, your client's in the soup.
That's true, or that's very true.
It's attorneys may know the English language better than English majors do.
It helps to be both, actually. Since I was an English major, so I can say that.
See, that's perfect choice then. The where can people find your work? I know where you are, but if people want to see you on the internet, or where can they go?
People want to see me on the internet. The best place to find me these days is Twitter. Mm-hmm. I have my Twitter handle is SHORTPOEMZ, short poems. And I do a lot of things on Twitter. I also have a web page, but that has samples of my work. I don't keep it up as, much as I should, because I find it's just easier to do Twitter, and basically I'm pretty lazy. Well, so you can also Google me and find all sorts of strange things about me.
Exactly. And
some true and some not true. So take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I have a fan base, and I have whatever's the opposite of the fan base. So I have two bases.
Yeah, there's a lot if people Google you. And on Twitter, one of the things people get fussed over about Twitter is the politics and all the nonsense. Roberta is straight up her work, and it's I don't know how many poems you have up there, but it's a big number. So if you go and just look at Roberta Beary and use the hashtag haiku or senryu or what haiga,
right,
you'll find her.
Actually, if you do photo coup, I like to pair my published haiku with my photos, which are not any great shakes, but it's something I like to do to make things more accessible.
Yeah, you do a lot of things with haiku. I like. Um, where did you start? I mean, everybody's got a story of how they stumbled into haiku, and I'm sure you have one.
I do have a story, Mike.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I first started writing poetry when I was around 9 because my father, for all his many faults, one thing that he did do well was read poetry out loud. The Children's Gardens of Verses and Best Loved Poems and this kind of thing. So I always had a ear for poetry early on. And then in the early 90s, I followed my then husband. I was called a trailing spouse to Japan with my 2 small children. And I found work pretty quickly with a Japanese law firm, but I also wanted to learn about Japanese culture. And I started reading English language haiku in Japanese newspapers. So it was in Japanese and in English, translated into Japanese, but all names. It's so funny going back to those days and seeing people whose work I read on that page. I did have some clippings, and then how they became good friends. And I had even forgotten that I had seen them in those, the Mainichi Daily News or the Yomiuri or something like that. One of them comes to mind. It was Leonard D. Moore. And so then in 1990, I joined what's called a cultural organization in Tokyo, which is where the Japanese try to imbue foreigners with a sense of their culture. And this was all about haiku and writing haiku and learning about haiku. And some people in my law firm also were very interested in haiku. It's Japanese often write haiku every day. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I got into it. And I also was lucky enough to meet Kristen Deming at that time in Tokyo. And she was, I think her husband was the deputy ambassador or something to mm-hmm. Japan. And we formed a close friendship. So it's kind of like everything came together then, except for my marriage, which went this way. But anyway, let's move on.
Well, I've been there too, so I understand it. But sometimes the path, when you take the Y in the path and have to make a choice, it turns out okay. It's turned out okay.
Right.
I think the other thing that I found is that I got into haiku. I was a free verse poet, and I wrote other things, and I was going to write a great novel someday. And I've gone from novel to less than 17 syllables, so I've really sort of compressed it's not even a novella. But what sustains you in it? Why did you get into it and just turn it into a part of your life?
I'd have to say that haiku has been like my drug of choice. Some people take antidepressants, or they self-medicate with alcohol, or they gamble, or, they do hardcore drugs like heroin. I like haiku as my self-medication. I think it has a very strong healing component. And you can write for yourself, or you can write so that others who have experienced similar pain identifies and with your writing. And that I do feel that I have a particular audience in mind when I write. And that's, if you want to talk about passion, that's my passion. And it's people who have been silenced, either through trauma or illness, or for some, reason. It doesn't matter what the reason is. I want people to know that I hear them, I see them, and I feel them. And that's my audience for my work. That's my passion.
And that comes through. Yeah, I'm the same way. I think people should be who they want to be, and no matter what. And I particularly don't like it when society squelches anybody for any reason. It's just something about it just has always bothered me, and I feel the same way as you do. It's like taking the pill in the morning. I don't take any medication. It's strangely enough. I have all kinds of weird ailments and stuff, but I'm 75 almost here in a couple of months. But
Oh,
it's good. Yeah,
it's big
it's just
news.
a wonderful, just a pill of haiku, and I'm happy. And I have had, like you, uh, you know, a number of people who've influenced me. You're one of them.
Oh, okay.
You
You're
are.
also on my list.
Good. That pleases me because you're one of those people that I look to, and but I'm interested too. I had a lot of people. Anita Virgil just passed, and
Right. She was a close friend, mentor, I would say.
yeah, same here. She was one of the first people who reached out to me 20 years ago. She'd been doing this for a long time, and encouraged me when I started to actually write real haiku instead of all the nonsense I'd been fooling around with. And she was one of those people who knew senryu. So, well, what are the people? Who are the folks that you look to? I think I know, but I'm curious.
Well, the one, of the haiku, so-called haiku masters from Japan, the one that I really come back to again and again is Santoka. He really moves me. His work, I strongly identify with everything in his less than wonderful life. I do strongly identify with the underdog, and he definitely was one. We've mentioned Anita Virgil. I'd have to say Alexis Rotella, huge influence, also a good friend. Ellen Compton started Towpath Haiku group in Washington, D.C. and I think it was the early 90s, and she and I became fast friends, close friends and writing partners. And we had a little mini group where we would workshop our haiku when I lived in Washington that was for more than 20 years. Peggy Willis-Lyles, really close friend and mentor. And I was devastated when she died so suddenly, a few years ago now. Leonard D. Moore, a wonderful writer and huge proponent of my work. I mean, just on his own initiative, has been championing me for like 20 years or something. I mean, he's just a wonderful poet himself and writer. Al Pizzarelli turned me on to senryu. Plus, he's a very cool guy, and I used to see him at haiku conferences, but I haven't been to one since I think it was 2015. Since my move to Ireland. So, but I still keep up with his work. Penny Harder. I remember the first time I dared approach her at a haiku conference. I think it was 2005 or something. And I was just in awe of her, and she was very, very welcoming, and, has been since. Jim Cation, he was a Towpath member early on. And, I did the Red Moon Press anthology I was I think an editor there for 6 years or something. And he's also been really good. When I was first studying Haibun, he really helped me quite a bit. And let's see, there's this guy named Mike Rehling who's really been a great person. And I also remember when I first met him, and it was at I think it was in Mineral Point.
Yes.
And another haiku gathering. I love those. One thing I really miss about, being under lockdown, we're on a very strict lockdown in Ireland, it seems like, for the last year, is not being able to go to these conferences and these haiku get-togethers. But I do remember Alan Compton saying, I think you're going to meet somebody, a poet named Mike Rehling, and if you do, you're going to be really lucky up there. So look out for him.
I was the lucky one. I was the lucky one. I remember you were so nervous about your reading.
Right. Yeah, those were the days.
And you just, boom, it just went right over the top of the stadium, and everybody was freaked out and loved what you were doing, and you were reading from your book. And and you were sitting there saying, I wonder how I did. And I'm going, wow, I should ever do that well, that'd be something. But you
that was
you're definitely my inspiration. So and Cradle is
thanks.
a great place to hang out.
Yeah, it was really good. I've had some good times there.
It's well, and we have the same people. Peggy Lyles, yeah, Penny Harder. Those are people. Uh, funny story for. I think you might have been at the HNA meeting. It was the meeting before. The last one was in uh, North Carolina, but this one was in Winston-Salem. The first time they came there, it was the last time I saw Bill, and he
Yeah.
he was presenting about Haibun, fiction in Haibun. And Bill was sitting in the first row, and he just kept trying to jump up, and she was the only one in the room I've ever seen who could make him sit down quietly.
Yeah, she did this. Like, let's say she just put her hand on the middle of his back. That was it. That doesn't work for me with any of my husbands, but I did admire that.
My wife has my number, and she's had it since she was 15 years old. So, fantastic. But we have a lot of the same circle.
There are also tons of other people that I just can't think of right now. So if you think you're one of them, you are.
There are a lot of people, Roberta, who think of you that way too. So you're a name that comes up a lot. Let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah, that's always been the case, but it has not always been in a positive way, and that's fine with me too.
I always tell people this. I think you and I talked about it a long time ago. I don't have any enemies because I refuse to accept the label. So if people get mad at me and later on they change their mind, it's like nothing happened as far as I'm concerned, because I'm just going to be me. I just write what I write, do what I do.
I aspire to that.
One of the things that you do that I like, that everybody admires about you, is you're not just a success in one corner of the haiku world. You write haiku. You certainly know how to write senryu. You certainly know how to write haibun. You certainly know how to do haiku. You certainly know, and you're unafraid to experiment. Talk to me a little bit about all the different areas that you participate in and how you feel about them. Where they fit.
Well, one of the things I do have to say right up front is that Haibun is my favorite forum of those that you just mentioned. I really feel drawn to Haibun because I feel like for those people we were talking about earlier, that people who are silenced, I think that Haibun is a very accessible form. Like, some people just don't get haiku. They just, for whatever reason, maybe something happened when they were little and being taught in elementary school about 575. But Haibun can also pass as prose poems. It has a flash fiction element in it. It has a creative nonfiction element. I mean, it can be so many different things. And I like it because, for my motto, which I stole from Emily Dickinson, tell all the truth, but tell it slant, Haibun works very well. But Haibun is also a really hard form. Mm-hmm. And as an editor at Modern Haiku, I get a lot of submissions from, I think, people in MFA programs or people who write lyric poetry, and they don't get that the haiku is an integral part of Haibun. It has to be as equal, if not better, than the quality of the prose. And, the title is also important. So I'm pretty passionate about Haibun, and I set the same standard to myself that I set to people that submit to Modern Haiku. So it's a pretty high standard, but I will work with people, if I feel that there's, as I say, good bones there in what they've submitted. I'll check with them first, because some people don't like their work messed with, but I leave it up to them. Of course, I have been accused of never writing a real haiku, that what I write is senryu. You'd be amazed to see the emails I get, Mike, or maybe you wouldn't, but And then people will publish articles and they'll write all these things. And, you know, this is not, she was awarded such and such for this haiku, but it's not a haiku. And, you know, it's a senryu, or it's not, or it's a, I forget what else, it's a short poem. So I don't really take that stuff to heart too much, because if one person is moved by what I write, or it helps one person, I don't care what the other, you know, 99 people think. I really don't. I do write haiku sequences. I like to experiment with those. I also have been known to, in my books, not so much for publication because it's kind of a no-no, but I will reshuffle my haiku previously published and make a sequence out of it, which I don't know if other people do that, but I don't think anything's prohibited in the haiku world. And we already talked about haiga. So I do write other forms, not just haiku. I mean, I do write quite a bit of flash fiction. That's within the last 8 years or so. So, but you know, I feel more enamored of the haiku and haibun forms.
They might pop us off of my Zoom meeting here. But,
okay, I do tend to talk a lot.
You did. I'm just saying we'll keep going.
And then they'll connect us again.
One would hope. They'll let you right back. Where are you published? Where do you publish your work? Where do you find where can people find your work?
Yeah, and I wanted to just add something else that I forgot, which is that I do believe in giving back to the haiku community. And that's why I often judge haiku contests, haibun contests. I've judged haiku book award contests, and I've edited, you know, like Haiku Society of America anthologies and other anthologies. I have much more time now that I'm retired, and so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, you do, and that's you're tireless. So that's one of the things you're committed to the form, and I get a kick out of your energy. But but where do you choose to submit your work for publication, and why did you pick them?
Well, sometimes it's serendipitous, like this Israeli press, Wishbone Moon Press, editor Alex Ben-Ari just contacted me out of the blue. I think actually maybe Gary Hotham spoke about me, and they've just done a book of mine in Hebrew that's apparently doing quite well, a book of haiku, which is, they've used the Hebrew word for deflection, which is one of my books of prose, of haibun and haiku sequences, but they added a bunch of other stuff. So sometimes it just happens like that. Other times I look for places where they promote their writers, meaning prizes or, you know, nominations like pushcart prizes. Right. So Claire McQueen's Quinterly, she takes Japanese form, she takes haibun, she takes haiku sequences. Tim Green's editor at Rattle magazine, they take haibun, they take haiku and sequences. I mean, of course, I never would publish my haibun now in Modern Haiku, not for the last 8 years, because I don't believe that I should publish my own when we take so few. I mean, the space for haibun, it's mainly a haiku journal. Modern Haiku gives you a big clue. And we do take a very small amount of haibun, so I don't think it's fair of me to promote my own work there. I do submit to the Heron's Nest, mainly because of my memories and good vibrations, let's say, for Peggy Willis-Lyles and Paul McNeil. He was my longtime editor there. I submit to the Haibun Journal, which is a fairly new journal edited by Sean O'Connor in Ireland. It's a print journal. And I submit to Presence, a UK journal, haiku journal. So, and of course I submit to Failed Haiku, Mike Rillings. And I've been lucky enough to guest edit there.
Yeah.
So those are the places. And I do feel that the editors are important where I submit, if I admire their work, if I think they're doing a good job, I'll send to them. I'll try to be supportive of new journals, but new journals sometimes don't last very long. So, I will give my support when asked. If I'm asked to submit, I'll try to do my best. But there are just so many journals out there,
Yeah.
and I think it's incumbent upon haiku poets to not just send things out all over the place. I think they should be selective where they send their work, and that it's to their benefit and the journal's benefit to do so.
Well, the current editor of Modern Haiku, Paul Miller, is fantastic. And he wrote an article one time, and I think you actually are a perfect example of it. And the title of it made me laugh because it said, "In Defense of Craft."
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I didn't know that it needed a defense, but it turns out Paul did a good job. And it's on Failed Haiku. He graciously let me
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
have a PDF copy of it. But and that embodies a great deal of what you do. You can always spot in your work that you spent the time to get it right. And I like that.
It is, and I mean, thank you for saying that, because I do put a lot of time into it and effort. And sometimes people say, "Oh, you write haiku because you can just dash it off," and that could not be further
Well, you can
from the
dash it
truth.
off. You can dash off haiku, but that's what they are, a dash. I got a lot of them.
Right. Right. So, I think a lot of these editors don't get enough credit. I mean, Paul Miller certainly doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I mean, he just works nonstop at that. And, there is a lot of, I'm not sure that you've experienced this because we have never talked about it, but, there's a certain amount of sort of bad press that goes around with being an editor, where people will complain, or, why didn't you take this, or what's wrong with you? And, you just have to kind of move forward when that happens and not get all caught up in personal things that have nothing to do with oneself.
I think you're the same as me, but as we talked about in the past, but I don't consider the word rejection to matter. It doesn't occur to me that my work was ever rejected just because it didn't get published. I mean, there's so many good poems out there, and
You're right.
if you're submitting to a journal, not everything. I get thousands every month. It's in the thousands. 1,500 poems get sent to me at Failed Haiku, and now Brian learned it. He got 200 pages.
Right.
The if you do that, you learn that it's.
You do have to have a thick skin as an editor. It is not for the faint of heart.
No, and I tell people this is just a personal thing. All editors are con artists. We have conned good poets into sending us their work so we see
Right.
it first. What could be better? I don't have to buy books. I get
Right.
hundreds of poets sending me stuff. Anyway, tell me about your books, because and where
Okay, I just happen to have some here. The Unworn Necklace,
Yes.
Available from Snapshot Press in the UK. I think it's in its 5th printing now. This was my first collection that won the Snapshot Press Book Award in 2007.
Yeah.
I just met somebody on a Zoom conference. I think it was 2 days ago or something, some haiku Zoom, where I wasn't speaking or anything. I was just in the audience, and he sent me a direct message about the Unworn Necklace. So that was nice. Deflection, Accents Publishing. That's the sequences and Haibun.
Yeah.
And for example, one of the sequences is what I was talking about, this Caretaker. I did take previously published haiku about my mom's illness, but the one next to it, Deflection, the title poem, was that as is sequence that Modern Haiku published. Wow. So thinking outside the box is good in haiku.
Yeah.
Wishbone Moon anthology for international women poets. I did with 2 other editors, Kayla Ramesh and Ellen Compton, recently, Jakar Press. I do highly recommend this, not just because I co-edited. This one is now available for free. Nothing Left to Say. It's King Rose Press, Marco Fraticelli, but it was guest edited by Michael Dillon Welsh. And this has a theme of silence that Michael picked me, probably because I talked to him too much. It was used to be hard to get, but now it's available at the digital library of the Haiku Foundation.
Fantastic.
So I'm working also on a manuscript with John Barlow that won this 2019 Snapshot Press Award, but this is all going to be haiku, called Carousel, but that's forthcoming. So I don't know when that will be available. And as I already mentioned, the book for the Hebrew speakers who might be watching, that Wishbone Moon Press in Israel, if anybody's interested. I also brought these two little, there's a couple more, but these are the Towpath anthologies. This was when I was the first one that I was in, and from the year 2000. And this one's very close to my heart. This one was the one I edited, Fresh Start, from 2015. And these are just fun because they're little and you can carry them around, and showcases the work of the people in the haiku group, which is another thing I wanted to mention, was the importance of being in a workshop or haiku group with other poets who are supportive. If you're in one where everybody's negative, you don't need to take that from anybody. So just exit stage left.
Feel the same way. We had a rule at Haiku Hut. The poet rules. In the end, if that's what they want, they get it. You can offer your comments and commentary, and sometimes I take it, sometimes I don't. Glenn Coates was somebody, I think I took all of his suggestions for my Haibun every time. Ray Rasmussen was another one. I just trusted them and their view of my work. So yeah, I totally get that. What are the things that you look for? We've talked about it a little bit in haiku and haibun and haiga and senryu. What, just generally and quickly, what are the things you look for? What are the
well, I first thing I look for is that the submission should be well written. We're talking about things I see, right? As an editor,
yes.
It should be well written. It shouldn't be, I'm going to send this to Roberta Beary because I know she's a good editor of my work and she'll edit it for me and then she'll publish it. No, that actually doesn't just happen in haiku. That also happened to me in my 35 years as a lawyer. I would get these contracts to review that were all over the place, and oh, you'll fix it. So, send it out when you absolutely have nothing else to add to it. When you think I would be happy to see this in myriad publications, anthologies, whatever. I do look for strong haiku and a haibun. The title's important to me. I look for people that are equally passionate about the form. You're not going to win any points if you're telling me how many places you've published or, awards you've won or any of that stuff. I do get these cover letters every so often, these like mini bios. I don't even read them. I just read the work. And the work has to say something, especially for haibun. I don't really want to read any more travelogues about I went here and nothing happened, kind of. Something has to happen.
Yeah.
Well, either to me as a reader or to you as the writer, which evokes a response in me as the reader. I mean, it's basic stuff, but a lot of people, especially people that think they can just leap into things without spending years and years and years learning the craft, which, you and I certainly did. I got to say, there's no instant gratification in the haiku and Japanese forms, as far as you can't just like go in and say, I'm here, I'm ready.
And the fun for me as an editor, and I think we've had this conversation, is when somebody who doesn't have a resume, who's never tried the form before, sends you something and it works. And I don't pay any attention to people's history.
Right.
Or
I do think that's also, I love those serendipitous moments when that happens, and you don't really realize it until, I don't really realize it until I get an email back, this is my first Haibun.
Right.
But, you know, usually, to be fair, it's like I've been a journalist for 25 years, or I've written screenplays, or there's something, you know, it's not just all of a sudden I woke up and said, I'm going to write a Haibun, and I've never written anything in any other form before. I don't know that that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. It's never the haiku moment that people talk about. It's always as Paul Miller said in his article, it's a craft. Occasionally you do write a poem that doesn't ever need to be touched. It just falls out of your head and it's perfect, and it gets published and you're happy. That's a rarity.
Yeah, that happened with the Unworn Necklace, the title poem. You know, but that's one out of several hundred, or if not thousands. You know, that's about the only one I can think of.
I've written thousands that never made it out of my word processor. They're hidden there for future generations to mull over how many you can write before you get one that's right, if you know what I mean.
It is fun, though, to be a haiku poet. That's a lot of people don't get that. It's actually a great welcoming community, and you can have, you know, fun conversations like this. I mean, it's not doom and gloom. And I used to do these readings, and people would come up to me at the end and give me the names of their therapists. And, because a lot of my stuff seemed very dark, but I would already tell them I've already did that for several years. You know, I don't need to see any more therapists now. I just do my haiku medication.
Right. It's a great way of putting yourself out there to another person, which is like your own persona. You're just talking inside your head, and it's actually better than a therapist because I know it all. I've been there, you know, so I can laugh at myself. But what projects are you working on? Anything now on your own work or anthology?
I am doing a bunch of projects that are haiku related, but I want to keep them under wraps because I don't want to jinx them. I grew up in a very superstitious family, and it definitely rubbed off on me. I am judging, this is public knowledge, so I can share it, the Presence Haiku Award this year. I think that's already closed, so I can say that. And I have been offered several other things to judge, including haiku books, but I can't take everything on. You know, I did do last year, Sable Books did a woman's, and Debbie Strange was the winner. And the Sable Books did a really beautiful job. Daniel Crack designed it. And it's just, that was a fun thing to judge. And so it went through it hit all the right points, you know, my giving back to the community, promoting the work of women. And it was a judge blind. It had two screeners that I should mention, Christina Singh and Kayla Ramesh, and they did a great job. So, I mean, you know, people working together, it's wonderful. There are some books that are pretty close to my heart that I just wanted to give a shout out. Sure. One of them is Plum Afternoon by Kristen Deming, which is Redmond Press. Kristen's, she's been dead about a year. She was a really close friend, a member of the Towpath community. I highly recommend this little book for people interested in either getting started or seasoned haiku poets. Anything you can get by Stuart Quine. This is Alba Press. He's a fantastic poet. Also, one of the early deaths from COVID, unfortunately. It's just really, I really miss reading his work. I have to make do with his two books. This is the other one, Sour Pickle. They're mostly what they call monaku. I call them one-liners because monaku stands too highfalutin for me. Also, I do like tanka. I don't write too much of it, but I do. And this Pamela Miller Ness, Leaves of the Ginkgo, which was gifted to me by Phil up in Canada. Beautifully crafted book. Of course, I never have the patience for that kind of craftsmanship. I think I once took a course in this kind of letterpress, and my book was such a disaster. And I think that's also one last mention is John McManus. He's out of Northern England, almost in Scotland, and his book by Inside the Time Machine by Iron Press, I think it's called. Cool. It's really, really fantastic work in here. So I come back and forth to these books when I need solace and uplifting moments or whatever, you know, when I'm feeling a bit down, and I always feel better afterwards. It's not like I sit around and read my own books all the time. I mean, I do read other people's work quite a bit, and that's another great thing about haiku, especially when you've met the poet.
Yeah.
But it's equally great when you haven't met the poet. So it's because you're getting to know the poet that way.
I'm judging one of the judges on the Touchstone Book Awards, and I really enjoy that. Again, that's I get 50, 60 books, and it's unbelievable pleasure to read it. And so all of them I've read and know.
And I think those awards are important. You know, I think people, it helps the haiku community to have these awards, and it's good that it's not the same people all the time winning the awards. I mean, I think haiku does need more diversity. It does. That's one of my passions. You know, more people of color, more LGBT people, just, you know, more people who, for whatever reason, might not be well represented. I mean, I think that's incumbent upon, you know, certainly a white poet like myself to promote those writers, and I try to do that.
Yeah, I think and by the way, the haiku community is very welcoming and very open, which is sort of cool. I mean, that's one of the other cool things that I enjoy about it. You know, it's that's a great.
I do remember what it was like when I didn't know anybody. When, you know, in 1996, when I moved back from Japan, and I put this email thing, and remember AOL chat rooms? I don't know if you remember them.
Oh yeah.
And this guy named Michael Dillon Welsh saw my query about a haiku group in Washington D.C., and he was on the other side of the country, and he wrote to me about Towpath, which had just formed in Washington. I mean, it's just all these serendipitous things, you know. It's like I start and end with Michael Dillon Welsh. Everything's sort of circles back to him.
A friend of mine at a poetry meeting wanted to know about haiku, and the person who was leading the meeting said, "Oh, go talk to Mike. He knows about haiku." And I said, "Look, I'm busy, and my wife's waiting outside. We got to go someplace." I said, "Go to graceguts.com, and you'll find your answers there." And I saw him a couple weeks later in another poetry reading, and I said, "Hey, I hated to give you the bum's rush there. Did you find what you wanted?" And he just looked at me with a kind of a funny look, and I said, "You didn't find what you wanted?" And he said, "Well, this guy's written 1 million words about a 17-syllable poem." So I told Michael that I've now focused people on specific articles rather than trying to.
And if he emails you, you'll get 1 million more going back and forth. But
Phil Higginson was the
good.
opposite. Phil Higginson would send me these one-line questions at 2 a.m. in the morning, and you go, "Why is this happening at 2 a.m. in the morning?" But he couldn't sleep, and I stayed up late too. So we go back and forth on silly little things, and he taught me a lot in his little 2-sentence email.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I also wanted to mention Charlotte de Gregorio's site,
Yes.
Daily Haiku, because she's also promotes a lot of people's work and gives back to the community, and works really hard. So give a shout out to her, Robert Epstein, and all his anthologies. I mean, there's so many. I could just keep talking, but I'll better stop now.
There's a lot of things, but I'm glad we're mentioning these things, because those are the things that influence me too. Acorn and Mayfly too are two of my favorites, for the reason you said about Deflection. You put it in your pocket. You can walk around with them. And it's just poetry, and so people can really enjoy it. They can just get into the poem and not worry about form or anything else, or any big long discussion. It's been a pleasure, but I'll give you one last opportunity. One last opportunity. What do you want people to take away from this interview about Roberta Beary?
Okay, I want a couple of things. I write for people who've been silenced so that they hear me. I already said that. Haiku should cause an emotional response in the reader. If your work is rejected, especially if it's rejected by me or declined, know that I get several rejections a day. I get rejected by Modern Haiku for my haiku submissions. I do not have any ins with anybody. Rejection is part of the game, but don't be afraid to send your work out. Don't let a rejection crush you. It just means that particular editor, it didn't work for that particular editor. It's kind of like, I always think of it's kind of like when you've been living with somebody for years and talking about marriage, and let's use male, female, and he says, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married. Then you break up, and 6 months later he marries somebody else. Okay. That's like, you keep sending your same type of work to the same editor who keeps rejecting it for years and years and years. And then finally, one of you breaks up and you send to somebody else, and boom, it's accepted. Okay. So I'm not quite sure that's the right analogy, but also please remember that editors are only human, and we have the same human, frailties that everybody else does.
Yeah. I get rejected all the time. Michael Dillon Welsh has been published thousands of times. I don't even want to comment on how many poems of his have not been published that he submitted. That's the nature of the game, and that's the other awful ramp that you have sometimes is social media and Twitter and things like that. And I know you're like me. You use it. Sometimes nobody wanted this one. Guess what? I tossed it out there and it gets 500 likes, and you go,
right.
Well, I guess it wasn't that bad. So for Roberta, it has been a pleasure. And I thank you so much for doing this. And I think other people will get a big kick out of it too.
Thank you, Mike. Are you going to say goodbye now?
I'm going to,
Okay.
I'm going to turn off the recording right this moment. But thank you, Roberta Beary.
Okay, bye.
Pleasure.